Hey everybody, and welcome to Bible class. John chapter 18 is our text today. I would love for you to meet me with an open Bible right there as I pose a really important question for you from the very beginning. Is Jesus a king? Absolutely, he most certainly is. We heard in John chapter 1, Nathanael make a great confession. You are the King of Israel. We heard in John chapter 12, Jesus fulfilling Zechariah's ancient prophecy as he made his entrance into Jerusalem. Behold, your King is coming. Jesus is a king. All right. Does Jesus have a kingdom? And most certainly he does. We heard him talk about the kingdom of God with Nicodemus in John chapter 3. But in John chapter 18, Jesus is going to clearly reveal for us a fundamental lesson we need to understand about the nature of his kingdom. Is Jesus a king? Yes. Does he have a kingdom? Absolutely. But my kingdom, he told us long ago, is not of this world. I want you to keep that important statement in mind as we dive into John chapter 18. Jesus has made his way to a garden, the Garden of Gethsemane, where he would often meet with his disciples. Someone else knows where that garden is, according to John chapter 18 and verse 2. Judas knew this place. And in John chapter 18 verse 3, Judas procures a band of soldiers and some officers from the chief priests and the Pharisees. They go with lanterns and torches and weapons. Jesus knew. How many times has John made sure we understand Jesus knew? Jesus, knowing all that would happen to him, came forward and said to these soldiers, "Whom do you seek?" Jesus of Nazareth was their answer. And he replied, "I am he." Notice this. Judas, who betrayed him, was standing with them. When Jesus said to them, "I am he," they drew back and they fell to the ground. So he asked them again, "Whom do you seek?" And they said, "Jesus of Nazareth." "I told you that I am he," Jesus answers. "So if you seek me, let these men go." John tells us this was to fulfill the word that he had spoken. "Of those whom you gave me, I have lost not one." Then Simon Peter, having a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant and cut off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. John knows. John was there. He's writing for us as an eyewitness. But Jesus says to Peter, "Put your sword into its sheath. Shall I not drink the cup that the Father has given me?" You see, Jesus' kingdom is not of this world. So the band of soldiers and their captain and the officers of the Jews arrested Jesus. They bound him. They lead him back into Jerusalem toward the house of the high priest. John chapter 18 verse 15 tells us that Simon Peter followed Jesus, and so did another disciple. Since that disciple was known to the high priest, he entered with Jesus into the courtyard of the high priest, but Peter stood outside at the door. So the other disciple, who was known to the high priest, went out and spoke to the servant girl who kept watch at the door and brought Peter in. But I want you to notice, the servant girl at the door said to Peter, "You also are not one of this man's disciples, are you?" And he said, "I am not." Do you remember how Jesus had this very night told Peter what was about to happen, and Peter couldn't begin to believe, denying Jesus. But in verse 18, the servants and officers had made a charcoal fire. It was cold that night. They were standing and warming themselves. Peter is right there, warming himself also, and the servants and the officers, they begin to notice who this is. We'll come back to Peter in just a moment. Meanwhile, the high priest questions Jesus about his disciples and his teaching. Let's listen to how Jesus talks. I have spoke openly to the world. I have always taught in synagogues and in the temple where all the Jews come together. I have said nothing in secret. Why do you ask me? Ask those who have heard me what I said to them. They know what I said. And when he had said these things, one of the officers standing by struck Jesus with his hand. Is that how you answer the high priest? He's told. To which Jesus answers, if what I said is wrong, bear witness about the wrong. But if what I said is right, why do you strike me? Meanwhile, in verse 25, as Simon Peter stands and warms himself, some of those around the fire say, you also are not one of his disciples, are you? And he denied it and said, I am not. One of the servants of the high priest, a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off, asked, did I not see you in the garden with him? Peter, for a third time, denied it. And just as Jesus had foretold at the end of John 13, at once a rooster crowed. Meanwhile, in verse 28, they lead Jesus from the house of Caiaphas to the governor's headquarters. It was early morning. They themselves did not enter the governor's headquarters so that they would not be defiled, but could eat the Passover. So the Roman governor, his name is Pilate. Pilate goes outside to them and asks, what accusation do you bring against this man? And they answer, if this man were not doing evil, we would not have delivered him over to you. Pilate tells them, take him yourselves and judge him by your own law. But the Jews say, it's not lawful for us to put anyone to death. That's what they want here. And even here, this was to fulfill the word that Jesus had spoken to show by what kind of death he was going to die. We've heard him say, not that he would be stoned, but that he would be lifted up from the earth. And when he is lifted up, that is how he would draw all people to himself. Pilate brings Jesus inside the headquarters and asks him, are you the king of the Jews? Jesus asks, do you say this of your own accord, or did others say it to you about me? Am I a Jew? Pilate answers. Your own nation and the chief priests have delivered you over to me. What have you done? Here's our key verse for the morning. My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting that I might not be delivered over to the Jews. But my kingdom is not from the world. So you are a king, Pilate wonders. And Jesus answers, you say that I am a king. For this purpose I was born, and for this purpose I have come into the world, to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice. Pilate says, what is truth? And after he had said this, he went back outside to the Jews and told them, I find no guilt in him. But you have a custom that I should release one man for you at the Passover. So do you want me to release to you the King of the Jews? And they said, not this man. give us Barabbas, who was a robber. We're going to pause right there at the end of John chapter 18 for now. But Jesus has given us so much to think about, his kingdom not being of this world. Let's talk about it. Thanks for being in class this morning. Hope you have a great rest of your class and a great start to this new week.